Pharmaceutical Technology presents the Drug Solutions podcast, where the editors will chat with industry experts from across the pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical supply chain. Join us as experts share insights into your biggest questions, from the technologies to strategies to regulations related to the development and manufacture of drug products. This is the Drug Solutions podcast. And welcome to today's podcast. This episode is sponsored by Veta, a leading global contract development and manufacturing organisation for the aseptic production of injectables, which supports its customers from the initial phases of clinical drug product development and filling to commercial manufacturing, device assembly and packaging, and lifecycle management. In this episode, I am joined by Jörg Zimmermann from Veta to chat about fill and finish advances. Thanks very much for joining me today, Jörg. It's great to have you. First off, could you please introduce yourself and provide some background onto your role at Veta and maybe give us a little bit more detail about the company as well?
Yeah, thank you, Felicity. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. So I'm Jörg Zimmermann. My profession is I'm a pharmacist, studied in Germany and also in Cardiff in Wales at the World School of Pharmacy. And I've been with Veta all my professional life, so I feel a little bit like a dinosaur now with almost 30 years in the industry. But it's so exciting to be in pharmaceuticals and drug doses. And yeah, working for Veta all this time, growing and bringing new medicines to patients. That's really what it's all about.
So given your role at Veta then, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on one of the recent evolutions that we've experienced within the industry, which is Annex 1. Yeah. What is the current state of Annex 1, in your opinion?
Yeah, so let me go back to my experience. So I've been in production for over 15 years running a production site, but then I've also run the Veta Development Service, which is the development of the dosage forms, the analytical methods, stability studies, and all that part. And now my role is external affairs, which means outreach, advocacy, lobbying, if you want. And with that, I've been very much involved in the evolution of Annex 1. So I actually was in the consultations in the previous version back in 2006 already. But now 17 to 22, that was the very intense period when Annex 1 really evolved. And the important thing to know about Annex 1 is that it's not just a European document, it's the European annex to the Good Manufacturing Practices, but it's also been adapted by PIC-S and WHO, although WHO has a slightly different version. So we can really say that it's a document with global reach, which makes it even more important to get the right interpretation. Coming back to the consultations, this was really intense and a really good dialogue between industry and the authorities. And there's a lot of things where we could find common ground and find the right formulations in the document, but of course not for all. But it's a little bit like the prevention paradox. There could have been things in there that really would not have made any sense and would have only cost money with no additional benefit. So I can say as industry representatives, we can claim that we've made our dent into the document. And when it was finally published in 22, we all thought, okay, this is great. Now we know how to move forward. And this is now I could almost call it a battlefield in the interpretation, because there's the intent and the general texts, but then there's also the wording. And there's differences in interpretation going by the word or going by the intent of a paragraph. And that's really what's going on right now in conferences, in panel discussions, in inspections and audits. But coming back to the content, Annex 1 really stresses contamination control strategy. What do we do to prevent contamination in product based on risk assessment and product understanding? And with that, we do see, okay, all the products need to be sterile, but it's the difference between doing small sterile dosage forms like syringes with monoclonal antibodies versus doing blow-fill seal single-use containers out of polymers or large infusion bags. They all need to be sterile, but you write something into a paragraph and it will have different consequences for the manufacturers. So this is the exciting field, and while we think it's all the same, it's not, and we've got to work on that.
And that's where partners such as yourselves are really helping companies, you know, helping them to understand these new regulations and things like that. So let's look a little bit greater then into the role of CDMOs. And we're witnessing a rise in pharma and biotech companies outsourcing, particularly fill finish services. So how can a drug owner be sure that they're selecting the right CDMO partner for their specific needs?
Well, first of all, what we see in sterile dosage forms is that we do have a much growing demand. Sterile dosage forms are now more than half of the market by value, and it's increasing even more. So we do see a lot of increase there, broadening the spectrum. And we do have quite a fragmented market, meaning that there's CDMOs for different parts of the market. I mentioned before blow, fill, and seal and large volume bags versus syringes. But even within syringes, a CDMO might look like one like the other, but one is more specialized in generics, high volume, and the other one is more specialized maybe on orphan drugs and high value innovative drug products. So that makes it very fragmented, but also means that there's a lot of growth and opportunities for all those players. What you have to look at, of course, when you choose a CDMO is to find the one that fits to your requirements. It's a little bit like choosing a car. Do I want a Porsche or do I want a Fiat? And it's kind of, you get what you pay for in a way. So you've got to look at, do they have the right capabilities? Do they have the right experience? Do they have the right quality, flexibility? Time to market projections, effective processes. And in a way, it always comes down to experience and doing the things over and over again. For example, we're running about over 200 projects in parallel at Feta right now, launching 10 to 15 new products to the market every year. That's more than the big pharma companies launch themselves, a lot of them. So it's a matter of having those processes automated, and new monoclonal antibody comes in, we know exactly how to propose the process for it and streamline it and be quick with it. So maybe I'll bring in a little anecdote that I really like. When we were sitting down with a customer with the high-level management meeting, and the customer's project manager pitched a project to them, said, oh, this is the first time that we've launched a stock keeping unit, an SKU, from a CDMO. And we were 6 months faster than if we'd done it ourselves. So that's the customer's project manager pitching it to their management, how great Feta was doing. And I was sitting there, and for us, it was just a little bit like a run-of-the-mill, not a very special project. We did what we would always do. And still, they were so appreciative of it. And looking at the patient, getting the product out to the market 6 months earlier is, of course, a big plus. So that's maybe a little story on that. And then, of course, when you look at technology, that's also very important. What kind of technology do they have in place? Is it up to Annex 1 requirements? Then there's also things like financial situation. Is the partner stable? Will they continue? Are there maybe conflicts of interest with own products versus contracted products? And all that boils down to me in another analogy. It's when you choose a partner, it's a commitment compared to marriage. It's a long-term relationship. You've got to work on it. You've got to work together. But it's not like I'm here today, I'm there tomorrow. We're looking at a couple of years commitment anyway to get the product to the market and then produce it.
So you spoke there a lot, the market's fragmented, but obviously there's growth happening in these, you know, niche kind of orphan drugs and things like that. And also you spoke about technology and the regulatory aspects causing shifts and increasing demand. So what specifically is driving the exponential growth of the CDMO market, in your opinion? And what is Veta doing to keep up with this growth and this, demand from industry?
So it's always difficult to predict the future, but the more data you have, the better you can do it. So at Veta, we look at the 10, 15-year plan of investments going out. And that's very important, and it's based on a deep and broad market knowledge. What is being developed by the companies? What kind of dosage forms are up there? What kind of quality developments do we have to take into account? And that's really what's driving it, because that's in essence the business of a CDMO, to have capacity available when the customer needs it. And if you look at the development cycles for new products, if you build it on your own, you would have to decide on those investments at a stage in the clinical development where it's not even clear what kind of dosage form it's going to be. And then it'll be another 5 years to have something commercial. And by that time, the product might end up somewhere else, maybe in a cartridge versus a syringe. And now you've built a cartridge plant and you need a syringe. So we are anticipating what's happening, looking very closely at the whole market. And if we, the big picture, look at it, biologics and orphan drugs is still continuing. Biologics are still so many great biologics in development. And then on top of that, we have the ATMPs, so the advanced therapeutic medicinal products, / cell and gene therapy in the American terminology, which in my opinion, or in our opinion, is supplementing what we have right now. It's not taking away from the biologics so much, and it'll be a long time before everything will be individualized and personalized in terms of medicine. So that's kind of where we are. If we look at the investment plans at Veta, we're currently in a 1.5 billion euro investment plan over the next 10, 15 years. And we recently announced through press releases the next big steps, which is one, commercial manufacturing in Germany in the Saarland, in Saarlouis, which will be a commercial fill finish site ready for production 2030, around that time, creating about 2,000 jobs. And it's been a real great experience to see the reaction from the people locally, from the government, keeping investments in Germany, creating high quality jobs. So this is really exciting. And then we do have another big step, which is our new plant in the US. So we already own the site in Des Plaines near Chicago. We have some offices there, but we intend to plan to build that out for clinical fill finish, which will mean that our facilities or people from Skokie, where we're currently producing clinical material, will move to Des Plaines into brand new state-of-the-art facilities for that field. And that's really exciting too. And it's, you wouldn't believe it, it's only clinical fill finish, but it's still a 200 million investment.
That's great. A great level of investment there into the industry. So you're such a specialist CDMO, and you're obviously growing in that sense. How do you balance, when a company comes to you, how do you balance, bestsellers and blockbusters along with these new breakthrough therapies, while also not, discounting the importance of any of them?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, it's all down to the same quality systems and quality principles. That's paramount. People need to be trained, people need to know what they're doing, but then they also have to consider and take into account the special requirements of a blockbuster product, where it's maybe 75 million units per year, and where quantity is paramount, and getting batches through at a quick pace, versus orphan drugs, where there's maybe just 100,000 per year in 4 batches. So in that case, yield and reduced losses is much more important, and those batches kind of need to be hand carried through production. So it's a different mindset, and I can see that as a challenge sometimes for people, but since Veta is only doing CDMO business, and since our people are used to doing that on a daily basis, I think they're just doing a great job with it. And it's not a contradiction between the small scale orphan drug products and the blockbusters. It's just the mindset, okay, today we're filling this. And of course, it's not on the same lines. A line that does 750,000 syringes in one batch will be built differently than one that does 5,000 vials for a very special orphan application. So it's not a contradiction. It's bridging that and being used to adapting to those challenges and the daily changeovers, right? It's not like we're running an insulin cartridge line for 3 weeks in campaigns and then do a changeover. It can be that we do 2 or 3 changeovers in a day on a line. But again, back to the people, I'm so proud of the people at Feta because they really know what they're doing and they're really burning for that, right? They embrace it.
And how then can CDMOs also balance meeting the growing demand that's being caused by, this aging population that we have, this kind of increase in complex chronic conditions that, driving the need for these biologic therapies? So how can they balance that while also maintaining that, optimum quality that is expected from CDMOs?
I think so. When I have customers visiting or people from the industry visiting, and they come into the plants, what they see is a unique and universal company culture, regardless which site they come into. The touch and feel is the same. So I have people coming in and say, hey, well, everybody knows what they're doing. I don't see anybody standing around. It's busy, but it's under control. And I'm always telling the Feta people, you're representing a culture. You don't notice it, but it's a company culture and things that where we have to take care of, maybe others would not. I'm just hypothesizing here, but that's kind of the thing. And with that mindset, we can adapt to the different needs of the different customers. So, okay, today we're filling for a startup company from Austria, and they're in phase 2 clinical, and we've got to take care of that. And then on another line, we're filling the 750,000 syringe batch that I mentioned for a blockbuster product. It's not a contradiction. It's just a beautiful mix of all those coming together.
So we've spoken a little bit about the trends that are impacting, the market. What trends are defining fill finish advances in particular from the perspective of CDMO?
Well, we're back to Annex 1 and the strict requirements for sterile products, and that's something if you don't continuously adapt to the advances in technology, then you're going to be left behind. Rick Friedman from the FDA had that in a little graph in a presentation the other day at ISPE, where he showed the 2 concepts of somebody building a plant, running it for 15 years, then demolishing it and building something new, which means they're kind of outdated on day 2, and then it's just downhill from there, versus continuous revisions of the process, adaptations of the processes, and you're never done because technology advances. So robotics, for example, there's so many robotic uses that you can do nowadays. For Feta, it's not that new. The site that I was running, we've had robots already in the mid-90s in aseptic fill finish. But every time I go to the plants, I see new robotic applications in compounding, for example. So we have we call him Helmo. It's a moving robot that does homogenization of solution during thawing. So solution that is supplied from the customer, thawing, and the customer has a requirement of each bottle being agitated once an hour for homogeneity during the thawing process. And imagine 60 bottles agitated over 24 hours, once per hour. That would mean 2 people in 3 shifts doing that, nothing but moving the bottles, documenting it. And now instead, we've got a setup where the robot goes in, picks up the bottles, does it, and it's also documented. There's a timestamp. We know exactly when things have been done and how they've been done. So that's a great advancement. And not just there, but also in secondary packaging, and just on a high-speed line, thinking of, you've got 600 per minute, so 6 tubs per minute output. You would need 2 people just to put it into crates at the end. Now there's a robot doing that, freeing up the capacity from people doing higher quality jobs and doing other things. So that's definitely something that is moving forward. We also look at advances in automated visual inspection, looking at automated learnings, machine learnings, artificial intelligence to look at defects, evaluate defects. The whole digitalization is moving forward, and it sometimes doesn't feel much like a revolution or a big evolution. It's just what's happening, and you've got to keep up with it. There's a lot to be said for optimizations on existing lines, because there's a lot that you can do if you think outside the box and be innovative about it. And if you think about a line that has maybe 20 approved products on it and you do optimizations on it, the authorities will always appreciate that because it makes the process more robust and more safe and less risk for the patient. If you say, okay, I'm going to move to a completely new system and go into a new clean room, that's such a big change to get 20 approved products moved from one line to the other. That's like almost like a 10-year program. So everything that you can do with existing lines and optimizing them is a good way to go. Of course, there's limits, and at Veta we've also shut down lines because we saw there's not much that we can do with it to get to the standard that we want. But at the same time, we do as much as we can, and you cannot imagine how cramped and full our revision periods in maintenance are, how many projects are running in parallel, optimizing this, doing this, exchanging parts. But it's just keeping current. On the dosage forms, if we look at that, there's a lot of things that will stay like it is for a long time. So I just mention needleless injection systems, very difficult, not really breaking ground because people try to think needleless is painless, but that's not necessarily the case. So I don't see that coming much. Then there's the on-body devices, the patch pumps, where you get 3 to 5 milliliters delivered to a patient. That is coming, but slowly and not fully defined yet. Also, if you look at sustainability, those single-use pump systems, it's a lot of high-quality medical waste, if you want. But that's really just my opinion. So don't. There's definitely needs for it, but it's kind of a niche. It's not going to be the big products.
Perfect. Thank you so much for talking to me today, Jörg. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you to our editors and experts for sharing their insights. Stay tuned for future episodes of the Drug Solutions podcast with the Pharmaceutical Technology Editors. If you want to stay in touch with the Pharmaceutical Technology team, subscribe to this podcast as well as to our e-newsletters. When you sign up for our newsletters, you will be updated about future episodes of Drug Solutions, receive our magazines, learn about upcoming webinars, and hear about episodes of Drug Digest. Thanks to everyone for joining us for this episode of the Drug Solutions podcast.